15 minutes. No announcement. No explanation. Yet somewhere between silence and speculation, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo's New Year holiday quietly shifted the emotional temperature of the entire fandom. And no one was prepared for what that silence revealed. There were no headlines waiting at the airport. No cameras hiding behind tinted glass. No official posts welcoming the new year. And that was precisely what made this moment feel unsettling. For artists whose lives are usually measured in schedules, contracts, and public appearances, the absence of documentation became the loudest signal of all. As the year turned, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo disappeared, not from the industry, but from its noise. Sources later described it not as an escape, but as a conscious pause, a decision to step outside the narrative that has followed them for years. In an industry that thrives on visibility, choosing invisibility is not accidental. It is intentional. They did not go to familiar celebrity sanctuaries. Not Beijing. Not Shanghai. They chose a city with softer lights and slower nights. A place where strangers still mind their own lives. A place where two famous names could exist without being spoken aloud. This was not a vacation designed for recovery alone. It was something quieter, something deeper. And as the days passed, that quiet began to form a story, one built not on images, but on moments no one was supposed to see. And that is where the unease began. Because when public figures stop performing, the world starts asking why. In that unnamed city, time moved differently. There were no early calls, no rehearsals waiting behind closed doors. Mornings arrived without urgency. Xiao Zhan, known for discipline and perfection, allowed himself to wake without structure. Wang Yibo, usually living between adrenaline and deadlines, chose simplicity, plain clothes, ordinary streets, unremarkable paths. They walked without destination, not to be seen, not to hide, but to exist. Observers later described something unusual, their comfort in silence. Not the awkward silence of strangers, but the natural quiet of people who no longer need to fill space with words. In a small coffee shop, unnoticed by most, they sat for hours. No phones, no screens, just conversation that faded into pauses. Xiao Zhan sketched quietly in a notebook. Wang Yibo watched, not distracted, not impatient. Present. The drawing itself meant nothing to outsiders. Abstract lines. No subject. But for those who understand Xiao Zhan's habits, sketching is not art. It is emotional release. This was not content. This was not performance. And slowly, whispers began. Not online. Not yet. Whispers among locals who sensed something different about these two men who carried themselves with calm, yet unmistakable gravity. The city felt it before the internet did. Behind the closed door of that quiet holiday, something far more profound unfolded. Something that could never be summarized in headlines or explained through public statements. These were not conversations meant to impress or persuade. They were conversations born from fatigue, honesty, and the rare safety of being unheard. They spoke about time, how quickly it moves when your life no longer belongs to you. About the strange loneliness of being constantly surrounded, yet emotionally isolated. About expectations that arrive, disguised as love, and pressure that hides behind applause. Xiao Zhan listened with the patience of someone who has carried too much for too long. He did not interrupt. He did not rush conclusions. Wang Yibo, true to his nature, spoke less, but every word carried weight. His sentences were short, direct, unembellished. There was no performance in his voice, only truth. This was not a dramatic confrontation. It was quieter than that, more dangerous, perhaps, because quiet honesty leaves no room to hide. As New Year's Eve approached, there was no desire to mark the moment loudly, no urge to transform it into something memorable for others. Instead, they chose simplicity, a modest apartment, a balcony facing city lights that did not recognize them, music playing low enough to be ignored, food ordered without ceremony. And when the countdown arrived, they did nothing. No phones raised, no smiles frozen from memory, no proof collected. That absence was deliberate. In an industry where moments only matter if they are documented, choosing not to record was a quiet rebellion. It was an acknowledgement that some experiences lose their meaning the moment they are captured. That night was not about beginnings or resolutions. It was about stillness, about allowing a moment to exist without demanding anything from it. And perhaps that was the strangest revelation of all. The silence held until chance intervened. The following day, without intention or awareness of consequence, a single image slipped into the public sphere. A reflection in glass. Two figures walking side by side. The photo was blurred, imperfect, almost accidental. But emotionally, it was precise. Within hours, conversations reignited across platforms and borders. Not explosive, not chaotic, but intensely focused. People did not argue about what was happening. They wondered why it felt different. Why this moment, with no confirmation and no context, carried such weight. And still, there was nothing. No explanations offered. No misunderstandings corrected. No narratives guided. For the first time in a long while, Xiao Zhan and Wang Yibo did not participate in shaping the story about them. They allowed silence to stand alone. Industry observers recognized the significance immediately. This was not a refusal born of fear. It was a boundary, a statement without words. Some moments are not meant to be translated for public comfort. There was one evening, however, when that boundary nearly dissolved. A small restaurant, few tables, soft lighting that encouraged discretion. Another guest noticed them, not because of recognition, but because of chemistry. The ease, the way conversation flowed without effort, and silence felt intentional rather than empty. A few photos were taken. None were shared. Whether out of respect or intuition, something stopped those images from becoming content. And in that restraint, the moment survived intact, untouched, unexploited. It was a reminder they both understood too well. Peace exists only as long as it is protected. When the holiday came to an end, there was no visible farewell scene to remember. No dramatic pause. No emotional declaration. Just an understanding, unspoken, but mutual, that something had shifted. They returned to their respective worlds quietly. And yet, those who watched closely sensed a difference. Their presence felt steadier. Their choices more selective. Their distance from unnecessary noise more intentional. Nothing had been announced. Nothing had been revealed. And that was precisely why the story refused to disappear. Because the public is not drawn only to spectacle, it is drawn to restraint. In a world saturated with exposure, the absence of explanation becomes magnetic. This New Year holiday did not ignite conversation because of scandal, but because of dignity. The city returned to its routine. Streets filled. Coffee was served. Balconies welcomed new occupants. Life moved on, but the memory remained. Not as evidence, not as confirmation, but as a fragment, unfinished, unresolved, quietly powerful. A reminder that some moments are not meant to be clarified. Some stories gain strength by remaining incomplete. And sometimes, the most meaningful chapter is the one that belongs entirely to those who lived it, untouched by interpretation, preserved by silence.